Hi everyone, I'm Brad Proctor. Thanks for joining me. A lot of you seem to really like that last video, so thank you very much. Corpse props were actually one of the first things that I was able to build back in the 1980s when I was first learning makeup effects, and I wanted something professional looking for my own short films. In that vein, I wanted to do a video about another thing that was difficult to accomplish or obtain back when I was first starting to do this: eyes. And whether you're doing short films or doing Halloween builds somewhere, sometime, eyes are probably going to figure into the mix. I'm going to show you a few different ways to easily make eyes or mod existing stuff, but I do have to tell you from the top that these will never be as good as professionally made resin eyes. Prosthetic eye creation is an exacting skill, and it takes a lot of equipment, some very specialized materials, a lot of patience, and considerably more money than what the eyes we're making will cost. Back in the 1980s in a small town, materials weren't readily available, so you had to make do. I needed to figure out how to make eyes with something round for the eyeball, an iris or pupil, maybe some veins, and it also needed to be glossy. Also, since I was a teenager, I really didn't have much money. I tried a few things, and what I eventually came up with is essentially this first project. Okay, the materials you'll need for the first eye are as follows: white or off-white craft acrylic paint, cotton swabs, toothpicks, nitrile gloves, scissors, red or wine-colored yarn, make sure that this is a type that can easily be pulled apart into separate fibers, clear 5-minute epoxy glue. Don't buy this in metal tubes, by the way. Try to get the syringes where you can actually make sure the stuff is clear and not cloudy or tinted. Modeling clay. You can find this stuff for a couple of bucks at a dollar store. A chef's torch. Hopefully you have one kicking around from the corpse making video, but if not, you can grab one of these between $20 and $40 from Amazon. Just remember, you probably need to buy butane as well, which will probably run you another 10 bucks. Hollow 1-inch gumballs. Okay, it surprised me how hard it was to find 1-inch gumballs these days. They used to be everywhere. But it took a couple of days before I finally got the notion to look at a gas station convenience store, and voila! Make sure they are hollow and not filled with hard candy or gel. Finally, craft store teddy bear eyes, the kind with a colored iris and pupil. There should be enough to make 6 eyes in a bag. In total, if you had to buy everything from scratch, it should run you about 70 bucks or less. That might sound a little steep, but keep in mind a lot of this stuff is either reusable or you'll have a lot left over for other projects. So, here's the materials all laid out. I also grabbed some 99% alcohol, but you don't need it for the project. It's just a nice to have. Some dollar stores carry it. Sometimes you can get it from a drugstore. The teddy bear eyes come in a bag of 6. Coincidentally, so do the gumballs, meaning that you should be able to make 3 pairs of eyes. The first step is to carefully wash off all the candy coating from the gumball. Use cold water so the gum holds its shape. It's not totally round, but the flat parts will work for what we're doing. The teddy bear eye has this little stabby screw in the back, which makes our job of attaching it easier. Sometimes the edge will have a little imperfection from the sprue created during manufacturing, so you can sand or file that away if you like. Now, gently push the eye into the flat part of the gumball, twisting the screw so it digs into the gum. Be careful not to press too hard. You don't want to distort the shape of the ball. Stick a toothpick into the other side, and you have something that looks like a very weird hors d'oeuvre. You can use the modeling clay as a base if you want. Just leave the plastic on and stab the toothpick right through into the clay. I happen to already have one of these helping hands tools, so I'm going to use that. You don't need to go to the expenses. They'll run you between 10 and 30 bucks, and the clay is like $2. Now, cut off a couple of inches of red yarn and slowly pick it apart so that you have essentially these little veiny fibers. Do several of these and have them all laid out and ready to go. Start laying them onto the gumball. If the gumball is still damp, the fiber should stick to the surface. If it's dry, just moisten it slightly with a damp tissue or cloth. Next, break out the epoxy. I had some Gorilla Glue lying around, and even though it has a slight yellow component, it is clear enough for this project. Add a very small amount of white acrylic to it. Not too much, don't make it opaque. Now, flood the eyeball with that white epoxy. Put it all over the teddy bear eye as well. While the epoxy is still wet, wipe off the teddy bear eye with a swab. Now, I used 99% alcohol here to clean it, but you don't need to. It just makes the job easier. Make sure to leave some around the edge of the teddy bear eye. This step is meant to conceal the edge and also to sink the veins into the eye whites a little. Now, let this set up completely, and if you used alcohol, make sure it's completely evaporated before the next step. We don't want to ignite our eyeball in our workspace. Mix up more epoxy and don't tint it this time. Slather it over the entire eye as evenly as possible. Now hit it very quickly with the torch flame. Keep the flame moving so the epoxy doesn't burn and the gum doesn't melt. This will smooth the glue and it gets out the air bubbles as well. There you have it, one quickie eyeball. You could bash several like this out in an afternoon if you needed to. Okay, now, what if you need something more realistic? Again, back in the 80s when I was trying to find cheap ways of doing this stuff, there weren't a lot of options. Eyeball keychains from a company called Tech Optics showed up in monster magazines, and I actually bought a couple for my short films back then. The company still exists, and they're still affordable compared to a lot of the professional options, but they aren't as cheap as what I'm proposing we make next. It turns out we can adapt the last technique into something more lifelike, if we're willing to wait on some shipping times. Several Etsy vendors sell 10mm irises that look quite convincing. They're glass conical bulges with photographic stickers on the back. They have a much lower profile than the teddy bear eyes, and right away that makes them a lot more convincing. Also, a smaller pupil. The teddy bear eyes look like they just got out of an optometrist after getting some of those dilating drops put in. Shipping took about 2 weeks or so for me. So these eyes are about $5, but with shipping it came to about $13. It's a little more expensive, but still pretty darn cheap for the amount of eyes that you can make out of these things. Okay, stick a new clean gumball onto a toothpick and mount it flat side up onto either clay or the helping hands. Hit the top very quickly with the torch flame, but don't linger or else this happens. So, I repositioned the gumball slightly once it cooled, and now I quickly flame it again. We just want a sticky surface on that flat part. Push the glass iris onto the ball where you flamed it. Using a damp tissue, I clean the iris and dampen the gumball. Back to the fibers. Everything else here is pretty much the same routine as the teddy bear eye project. I just decided to bring the veins a little higher up, closer to the iris. I just find it looks a little more realistic. Epoxy and white paint, swab the iris clean. I also used a little alcohol on my finger to smooth some of the drips this time. Again, wait for the epoxy to set and all the alcohol to evaporate completely before the next step. Clear coat the eye with untinted epoxy and hit it quickly with the torch flame again. Here's a comparison of the two types of eyes. I did not finish up the backs of the eyeballs because you'll never see those. Later on, I will show you how to gore them up. So as you can see, the iris is a little bit off in this newer one, so be careful when you lay it down. It's very easy to goof a little. Depending on why you're making these, either could work. The main advantage to the teddy bear eyes is their availability, but the glass irises just look better, although they do cost slightly more and they take longer to acquire. Okay, the last thing I want to demonstrate for you isn't a build so much as a modification. We're going to paint veins this time, so we'll want red acrylic paint as well as some bluish and yellow ochre paints and transparent glue from a dollar store. You can get half-shell eyeballs on Etsy or eBay and probably from doll making suppliers. The colors are a little strong, but they aren't that terrible, especially if you're going to gore them up. Get a little modeling clay, smoosh it into the inside of the eye, and pop a toothpick into it. Now you can get it into the helping hands or just stick it into a block of clay. Pour a little of the clear dollar store glue onto some tin foil. Using a chunk of sponge, a cotton swab, or even a brush, dab a coating of the glue over the surface of the eye. Now, on hindsight, it would have probably been a good idea to lightly sand the whites of the eye so it wouldn't bead as much. So if you want to do that, just try to avoid the corneal bulge. Allow the glue to dry. Now, add a little red paint to the clear glue. Add a little more glue to the eyeball, then dot some of the red tinted glue around the bottom edge and drag it up towards the iris. You can do a few layers like this, drying the layers in between. The eye is too white. It doesn't look natural, so we want to get some more clear glue, then tint a little bit of it kind of a blue or blue-gray, and some of it can also be tinted a yellow ochre. Give it another coating of clear, then dab a little of the blue and yellow randomly and sparsely onto the eye. Try not to mix the yellow and blue together because it'll turn green. Coat it with clear epoxy and flame it. So here's the before and after. You could combine the techniques you've seen in the other projects, yarn on this eye, clear glue, and paint on the gumballs. Play around and see what looks good to you. Now, obviously the stuff I'm showing you today isn't what we do professionally. We don't use gumballs, for example. And they certainly wouldn't work for wet or hot outdoor weather conditions, but these are quick ways of getting the job done for indoor props. And if you find yourself suddenly needing something with little or no time or money, these just might be a way to get the job done. I will mention a few ways to get more realistic and durable eyes, but expect these to cost more. Tech Optics, which I mentioned before, sells a variety of realistic human eyes. The most affordable still comes in the form of a keychain, and currently they run about $30 a piece. Poke around their website and see what they have to offer. Etsy has a number of eye makers as well, and many are very realistic. There's a lot to browse through, and the prices range from $30 per eye to over $100 an eye. Just read the descriptions and make sure you're getting the right size. Glastic full globe eyes can be found from various retailers like shopforeyes.com, Amazon, and Walmart. We used a bunch of these on Deep Rising for the melted bodies in the cruise ship corridor. These do have a seam around the middle, which will need to be disguised, and while I don't have one to demonstrate, I can show you how to do it with one of the eyes we made today. If you don't mind half domes like I was using in the last project, Doll of a Kind on Etsy sells glastic eye domes in human measurements and smaller. Let's add some gore. We're going to put some muscles and an optic nerve on this eye. There's a lot of materials you can build out of, but I'm going to use some of the ones that we might already have. Latex, baby powder, yarn, some acrylic paints, some sponge, and a cheap brush. You'll want some kind of glue as well. I'll use contact cement, but any solvent-based glue should work. You'll also need a smooth, non-porous surface. In this case, I'm using an unpublished novel I wrote many years ago, but you can use a mirror, plastic storage container lid, or anything else that's relatively disposable. Put some latex into a cup, then add a small amount of red acrylic paint. You can mix a custom color if you wish. I'm just going straight from the bottle. Stir it into the latex using any type of disposable stir stick. Then use a piece of sponge to lay a layer down onto the plastic or glass surface. After it dried, I decided I needed a little more pigment, so my second layer is more strongly tinted. When this is dried, lay down a piece of yarn that you've folded in half and start pulling and rolling the latex sheet over it. The latex will stick to itself, so you won't need glue here. Do another layer, and when it's dry, rub some holes into it, then roll the latex covered yarn over it so the latex grabs. This will be our optic nerve. Set this aside and lay out 4 patches of red liquid latex onto your plastic. These will be muscles. Rub holes into each one, but be careful not to lift the edges up. Very carefully peel half the latex away from the plastic and fold it in half as evenly as possible. The latex will bond to itself on contact, so be careful. Now, lay down a layer of untinted latex. Dry it, rub some holes into it. Gently lift the red latex pieces off and place them onto the untinted latex. Roll each red muscle so it grabs some of the untinted latex. Sprinkle on some baby powder and use a brush to coat each muscle as you lift it off the plastic. Give the optic nerve the same untinted latex treatment, and we're ready to move on to the next step. Since the reverse side of the eye has a hole in it from the toothpick we used earlier, we'll put some glue in that area and attach the optic nerve. I had left some strands of yarn sticking out of the latex, so that helps it grab. I used a chopstick to push some of it into the hole. For the muscles, I'm adding glue to both the latex and the gumball because I'm using contact cement. Whatever glue you choose, make sure it's completely dry before moving on to the next step. I'm mixing up a little latex and acrylic here. If you have leftovers from before, that'll work too. I have separated some fibers of yarn, and so using the latex, I'll apply this to the edge of the muscle where it contacts the eyeball and manipulate it into tiny, veiny, organic shapes. Hang it up somewhere and let it dry almost completely. Now, go along and gently push down any bits of latex that seem to be sticking up. Just kind of round off any rough bits and hard edges. If the latex is still a little moist but not wet, it should crush down well. And that's all there is to it. You can add blood or paint if you want, but this makes a good base, and the gory bits should be nice and jiggly. Thanks again for watching. See you next time.